Right, all right, all right. I'll tell you what, I don't know about you guys, but I get a little fired up listening to that song. James Brown, how are you, my brother?
Good. I got my second cup of coffee for the day. Ready,
Nice.
ready to go, baby.
Well, that's awesome. Before we get started, I just want to welcome everybody to another episode of More Listings Mastermind. That's really what it's all about, guys. In my opinion, I'm a real estate agent just like you, and I think that feel very strongly about listings are the way to go, are the way to grow your business if you're in real estate. We're going to talk a little bit today about some different ways, things maybe you haven't heard about before. We certainly want to open up the opportunity for you. But before we do, I just want to let you know why we do this. We do this More Listings Mastermind every single week, 1 o'clock Pacific time, every Wednesday, Whiteout Wednesday, I like to call it. And we host this just because we want to share what some of the really cool things that are going on out there in terms of getting more listings. We want to make sure that we're always introducing to our partners across the country great ways to grow their business, no doubt. I'm still letting a bunch of people in, so I'm just letting everything go here. But I tell you what, it's sponsored by Partner Plus, taking more listings. It's not a strategy, it's a ticket to real estate gold. So thanks, Partner Plus. I'm going to go ahead and get started. And if you guys can just do me a huge favor, that'd be awesome. We're going to go ahead and put everybody on mute. If you can just mute yourself. I know we got a lot of stuff going on in the background, phones ringing, dogs barking, chit chat, whatever. Let's go ahead and get that to a minimum because we've got a great program for you today. So again, thanks for jumping on. I think the biggest thing is when you're a listing agent, you want to make sure that you're going after the lowest hanging fruit on the seller tree. I think most of you on this call will appreciate that. Um, Versus the highest fruit. Let's get the lowest hanging fruit first. For example, top producers focus on anywhere between 3 and 5 niches. FISBOs, I love FISBOs. They're the ones with their hands up. They're going, hey, look at me. I want to sell my home. Expireds and canceled. Expireds, they just got out of a 6 month relationship, oftentimes. A 6 month relationship with their expectations were not met. So I love working with expireds. Once you get their negativity wall down and you have a normal conversation, it's fantastic seller. Fantastic. Pre and post foreclosure. I'm not a doom and gloom guy. I'm a realistic guy. I like to pay attention to my market. And there's an opportunity to help a lot of folks that are maybe in some distress, haven't made their payments in a while. They don't know what to do. Let's reach out to them and let's give them opportunities to. I'm not looking to give legal advice. I'm certainly not doing this for any kind of compensation, at least initially. I just want to help the folks in my community that are in need, that are behind in their payments and have no idea what to do. We want to be able to give them options, reach out to them. In the event they cannot sell their home or save their home, they'll need to sell their home. So we want to make sure we're a resource for them. And then also positioning into the REO space. There's probate and divorce. If you're working with attorneys, that's solid business to have probate, divorce, work with attorneys, work with investors. And don't forget your sphere of influence, your people that already know, love, and trust you. If you don't follow up with them, I can tell you what, somebody else is, I tell you that. So with that said, we just want to go over a few things. I want to get the program started because I think this is just, I'm super excited because I got to tell you, I my first home, Carla and I bought our first home. I owned a condo when I was 18, but our first home as a married couple was in 1990. And we used it. We did a VA seller carry, and the seller. So we basically we assumed the VA loan, and the seller did a carryback for the difference. I basically came in with my commission and paid my closing cost. That is what about the extent of my creative financing. So I want to make sure that we're taking notes. So, and I want to read this to you real quick before we get started. Tell me and I forget. Teach me, I may remember. Involve me and I will learn. Benjamin Franklin. So go old school if you want, guys. I've got a notepad. I've got a pen here. I'm going to take some really good notes. I'm super excited. So take your notes, ask your questions. At the end of the session, we'll have a Q&A. So put your questions in the chat box. My beautiful bride, Carla, will be manning the chat box. And James, she said hello. Loves you, brother.
All right. Hey, Carla.
Yeah. And so Carla will be manning the chat box. So put your Q&A in there. We'll answer those towards the end of this session because we want James to just really unpack a lot of stuff. But before we get started, I want to know who we have on the call. If you can put in the chat box what city you're from, that's question number one. What city are you currently in? What city is your area of expertise? Because I'm a big fan of networking with agents all over the country. There's agents from all over the country on this call. I want to make sure that I'm being a referral source. I can tell you this, if James from Colorado has a listing that needs to be handled in San Diego, it's a very simple one phone call for him. He can reach out to me. I want to make sure that we're using our referral sources the best we can. So put in the chat box, put where you're from, and we're going to go ahead and get that going. One last question. If you've taken any listings before, you've more than likely have done an open house. If you have not taken a listing, but you're a buyer agent and you've done open houses, I want you to put in the chat box, what's the most amount of people that you average? What is your average guest total for your open houses? I oftentimes get 5 groups, 10 groups, 20 groups. However, what is your average amount of traffic that you're getting to the open house? Because we're going to want to expand a little bit about that as well today. So with that said, I just want to go over a couple of housekeeping items. This is what our open houses look like. So let's look at the chat box real quick. We've got, hi there from San Diego. We're Chino Hills, Culver City, South Jersey. Got Las Vegas, Houston. We're all over the place. This is fantastic. Sharon from Walnut, Natasha. This is great. Now we're going into the question about the open house traffic. 1532. But look at the traffic that we've driven to our open houses. And don't you think when you take a listing that it's all about driving traffic? We're going to focus on that as well at the end of this. Another thing we want to focus in on is the open house traffic. What results are you getting? We're going to share some results that we're getting with our properties. This was just last week. 23 offers, all transparent. We'll share that with you towards the end. But at the end of the day, we want to make sure that you're working most efficient and effective way possible. For example, you can take listings from anywhere. And some of you know anyway, that Carla and I are traveling the country in our RV. And a lot of people go, well, did you retire? No, we're just coming up with efficient and effective ways to take more listings. So that is where I come from. I want to help you grow, take more listings. This podcast style Zoom mastermind is all about bringing tools to you each and every week. So with that said, 1 into 5, what is that? 1 into 5 listing opportunities. For every listing that I take, I want to squeeze 5 more opportunities, whether it be a seller, whether it be a buyer, whether it be an investor, whether it be an agent to grow my team nationally so they can start doing more open houses and taking more listings themselves. But 5 versus 1, I can take 5 listings to the time it takes a buyer agent, a traditional buyer agent, to do 1 transaction with multiple showings, multiple offers. Then you got the inspections and you got all that other stuff going. So I'm going to show you how to transition to at least balance out your business. We do this every Wednesday at 1:00. We want you to jump on anytime you want. We go over goals and actuals, tracking and measuring. We go over getting more listings, working with the lowest hanging fruit, like I mentioned. We go over open houses, kind of like what I just showed you. We're getting lots of traffic with prospecting, farming, database, all that stuff. So with that said, if you want to record this, I'm cool with it. You can record it, share it, do whatever you like. Don't keep this a secret. Share it with your friends, your family in the real estate industry. So let's collaborate. So bottom line, we'll do this every Wednesday at 1:00. But with that said, each and every week we have a special guest, and this week is no different. So let's do a quick sound check. James Brown in the house, the hardest working man in real estate. And I tell you what, it's an absolute pleasure to have you here. So real quick, there's your sound. I tell you what, James Brown in the house, the hardest working man in real estate. Welcome to the More Listings Mastermind, my friend.
Thanks, man. I'm glad to be on here. And for anybody that has not been on this call and knows Robert, he's a freaking beast. So all the stuff he's saying, he lives it. It's real. So
no kidding. Well, you know what? I appreciate those kind words, but it's not about me, brother. It's about you. So let's get right into it, man. I'm super stoked. I mean, you and I I have had some really good times. We've really had a chance to hang out and spend some quality time together. But I've always been interested in some of the things you're doing. You think totally different than I do in terms of other opportunities out there. And that's what I wanted to bring you on and share with what you're doing. So let's get started. Let's tell the audience, who's James Brown?
Well, it's interesting. Like, I come from a background, I was a graphic designer, so very creative industry. And then I got into real estate on the investing side because I wanted to, build a rental portfolio. Um, and the deeper I got into it, I realized there was a lot of different ways to do it besides just buy a long-term rental where you rent for a year. Or house hack or fix and flip. Like that's what everybody I think starts out with. And then I realize, oh, there's a whole other world here and there's better ways of doing it. So that's how I got started and I got
That's
licensed
yeah. So
and
how
really
long have you
get
been doing this? How long have you been diving into this space?
we started our business late 2019. So it's, enough to have a good feel for it.
Yeah,
But
and
there a lot of
yeah,
stuff's happened in
you know what
finance.
it certainly has, and I know in our conversations together is there's a lot of good stuff for agents. So let's dive right into it. You do a lot of coaching, a lot of training. You've rolled out a new coaching program that I'm sure we'll want to talk about that and share with the guests today. We've let's talk about first things first. We want to use the creative financing tool to get more listings. How can you expand upon that for our audience?
Well, creative financing is kind of a big term. If people have heard of subject to probably or not, um, that's a way of taking over somebody's loan that's in trouble, kind of, similar like Robert was talking about, notice of default, people that are behind on their payments. That's one way to help them. You can also hurt them too. So you really got to know what you're doing there. Um, I'm part of Pace Morby's sub two group. He's all over the place now, but if you're interested in that, reach out to me. I can kind of give you a background on all that. We can dive into that separately. Um, but where I am in creative financing is lease options. Same thing as rent to own. Um, there's a lot of reasons why. I come at it from the investing side. Um, I got licensed as an agent for multiple reasons. Like my one of my coaches, and I've had multiple coaches in the space, but one of them, Jesse Mills, actually, he's part of our group here at EXP. He was like, "Man, you got to get licensed for multiple reasons." For everybody here that's already licensed, you've already got that out of the way, so you've got that base. Um, so I don't know, Robert, where do you want to head?
Well, let's do this. You've talked about two really important things. Subject to
Yeah.
is a great way for somebody to get into the game. Low down payment, no lenders really involved. So why don't we expand on subject to real quick first?
Yeah. Um, where do you want to head with that? This,
Let's talk about how using the subject to theory and method to take more listings. Give us an example of how we can take immediate action using the subject to method and going to get more listings doing it.
as far as getting listings, I hadn't thought about that. I just, if you want to invest as a realtor, that may be a way to do it.
There you go. So let's expand on how the features and benefits of subject to for whether you're a listing agent, buyer agent, or just an investor. Why don't you expand on subject to for us? First of all,
Yeah,
explain to the audience who might have some new agents on, explain what subject to is, and then let's dive in to see how they can use it to benefit them.
yeah, yeah. So, like I said before, it's somebody that is in trouble. They're behind on their payments. They're going into default, most likely, or already. The process is starting. And they need to figure out what to do. Um, they might not have any equity in the home to pay out commissions for the realtor. So they're stuck, their next option is a short sale. And that's going to ding their credit and hurt them for a long time. So if they're in a position like that, we as investors can come in, catch up uh, their payments, their arrears, and start making their payments. Um, Now, as an investor, it's got to be a cash flowing property. So whatever the mortgage is that you're taking over that they have, there's got to be some gap in there between that and what you could get for rent. So that's kind of the gist of how that all works.
And you can actually use this as a tool when you're reaching out to sellers. You're giving them more options of selling if they're tight in their equity. If there's some stuff going on that we can come in and locate a buyer and let them go subject to, it helps the seller out. Obviously, a straight sale is going to be the best kind of sale, but we want to look at other options, like for instance, cash offers.
Yep.
Cash offers very rarely are the best tool for a seller. It's really for the notice of default, not even so much for the default, but as the notice of trustee sales, where there's an actual pending auction date where they potentially could lose their home. A cash offer might be the best way. But if we can come up with solutions when talking with sellers, and you're adding subject to, where I'd say 90% of the folks on this call never even heard of subject to. It's not something that's been done for a while because we've had such a robust market. But we're certainly going into a transition, again, not being doom and gloom, but we're going into a transition where we're starting to see more pre-foreclosures. We're starting to have a conversation in the REO space. Um, so there's a lot of those things going on. There's uncertainty in the stock market, left and right, all around. It was huge today, but it was down lower. I mean, so there's a lot of uncertainty in the industry. We need to make sure that we're providing all the tools to our sellers, to our buyers, to our investors. And subject to is certainly a great way to go, especially when there's not a lot of money on either side. The seller lacks equity, the buyer lacks down payment. It's a perfect marriage. So we want to make sure that we're opening those options. Lease options, another tool. And did you want to expand a little bit on the lease option parks? I know you're real bullish on that, and that's going to be more and more on opportunity. Want to like unpack the lease option rent to own scenario?
Yeah. Yeah. So that's where I started. That's where I continue to put focus. Um, it's there's a possibility to get listings if they don't work out potentially. It's more for on the buy side and working with investors. So the way we do it, let me just kind of unpack how we do it.
Yeah.
There's different ways of doing rent to own. The kind of the traditional way is property first. So either an owner wants to make it available, rent to own, or an investor comes in, works out a deal, an arbitrage type deal with that owner, and turns around and finds a rent to own buyer. So you're kind of in the middle, call it a sandwich lease option. The way we like to do it, we call it a reverse lease option. So we find the buyer first. We already know that they fit a good rent to own scenario. And then we let them pick out a house on market, anyone on market, and then we go buy that house for them. It's nice because they have any home on the market to choose from, and right now it's a good time to be buying, as you guys know, because it's starting to level out.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so that's kind of the gist of what we're doing.
I dig it. I dig it. I think at the end of the day, we got to look at this. We got to look at it as a coming from contribution, reaching out to our default sellers, reaching out to those folks that are, maybe have no idea what to do. Their heads in the sand. They can't figure out what's ways up. And I think the biggest thing is going there. Everybody always goes, every agent goes after these for sale by owners expires, these pre-foreclosures with the intent of taking a listing. I get it. But if you come in a different approach, more of coming from contribution, where you genuinely want to help them achieve their ultimate goal. In many cases, the sellers that I talk to in the NOD and the pre-foreclosure space, they 99.99% of them all want to keep their home. So if we start with coming in with a conversation that we want to list their house, the conversation's over because they want to keep their home. Their goal is to keep the home. We want to make sure that we're providing them with solutions because that's our responsibility. It's our fiduciary responsibility to our community, in my opinion. So if we do that, we start with that, knowing that of those 99.99% of people that want to keep their home, a good number of those will not be able to. And if we can offer them with some solutions, quick solutions to obtain the highest and best price so they can walk away potentially with some equity, because a lot of people have a lot of equity still, but they're still in default and they can't seem to figure out how to get it right the ship. So knowing about solutions like subject to, and we'll answer your question, Mark, here in a minute, regarding the lender escalation clause and all that. Lease option, rent to own, huge way. A lot of times they're lease to own, like you were talking about, James, is you're going to pay a little bit more in rent because that's going to go towards the down payment and a agreed upon time, whether it be 1-2 years. A lot of times that sales price stays put. If the market goes up, the seller loses. If the market goes down, I mean, the buyer wins. You know what I mean? So my point is, it's locked in. So
Yep.
now there's a certain amount of time. So it's a great way to go. What else would you like to, James, expand upon? I know you've got a lot of great things going on. Tell us a little bit about your coaching and your training agents, and tell us a little bit about what that looks like.
Yeah. Before we talk about that, you touched on a point that is another super creative thing that we can do. So somebody's got equity in their house. Um, they've had it for a while. They're getting behind on payments. They want to stay in the house. They don't want to have to sell it. And like they go to the bank. They're like, oh, we want to get a HELOC on this thing, or a cash out refi. But their qualifications have changed since they first got that loan. Maybe something went wonky. Their debts went up. Any number of reasons why the bank's going, well, we can't give you that equity. It's locked up in that property, and they desperately need that. It's the same as any kind of rent-to-own scenario. We can step in where the banks can't or won't. We can buy that house from them temporarily, rent it to them with the option to buy it back from us later and get them that portion of their equity out. If you didn't follow that, no worries. Just know that there's a solution for things like that we can dive into that's just not the ordinary. So this rent to own is pretty flexible. So we can talk about that, another time or, offline. But yeah, Robert, you mentioned the coaching program. So I'm just rolling this out. It's just going to be one-on-one for people that are interested where it makes sense. Part of the value that I'm bringing is I have spent a lot of money and had multiple coaches around the country with all kind of different perspectives. Some of them do some of the things the same way. Like I said, with Jesse Mills, we do the reverse lease option, which is great for multiple reasons. So if you want to learn this and get more business and help more people, really it comes down to you make money if you help more people, right? And so there's a lot more people coming in to the need for this. In fact, so two big companies that were doing rent to own just pulled the plug on their programs. Home Partners of America, massive company backed by BlackRock, and Divvy, who used to be a partner with EXP, both have just pulled the plug. They're, kind of getting rid of properties they've got, ones that didn't sell to the rent to own buyers. So there's a massive opportunity for us to fill that gap. And so I want to help people learn this in other markets besides my market. Like I don't want to create competition for myself. So, I've already kind of got a few people, in other markets. through the network that I've already kind of plugged into with all my other coaches. Um, but I'd say there's different ways for you guys to make money. Um, it's a puzzle. So we need a buyer, we need lenders, we need investors. So the way this works, like when we buy a house for somebody, we're usually partnering with an investor unless we personally can come in and be the investor. So you could be an investor too. Like I've worked with another agent that joined EXP after we did a deal. He was the investor, he and his wife were the investors. Um, if you have a buyer in your market, you keep that buyer as your client. We just jump in and help you close that deal. So there's all those different pieces, and all we need is one each, and so we can put a deal like this together. I've done complex ones where I counted like 13 people that were involved, down to the nitty gritty, an inspector for the well because it was a rural property. But just saying that there's a lot of ways that we could work together and help more clients and go find those clients. So I've got some graphics I could share that you could, take and put some posts out on Facebook and try to find those clients.
And you know what, James? This is the what I don't want them to not understand. This
Okay.
is another opportunity. People are always looking for niches. I like FSBO's expired pre-foreclosure. I like working with investors and always looking for more sellers. That's where I kind of stay in my lane. But because you have an idea of you can reach out to subject to and where that audience would be is the pre-foreclosure. You've got your lease option opportunities for your buyers, but you're also presenting that option to sellers. Reverse lease option. I would love to have you expand on that. But one thing I think is important, BlackRock, they're starting to sell off. A lot of the hedge funds are starting to sell off their properties. So what's happening is that is an opportunity. It like in the REO days when people were foreclosed on their home, the banks would assign us the listings, and we would sell very high levels of listings every single month. I think we averaged about 385 active listings at a time during that time. So that's a lot of business, but it's going to be different this way this time around. And I think what we're going to do is we're going to be talking to investors, savvy investors that own large portfolios that are dumping those properties. Make sure we're reaching out to them as well. But if you're in the conversation, that's when the opportunities present themselves. So you have to put it out there to get it back. You need to let people know that. I mean, I let people know I work with sellers, and I get most of the referrals I get are all sellers because I really am focused on who I'm trying to attract. I want to work with sellers. I want to work with investors. I like working with buyers that become sellers. Does that make sense? So make sure your marketing is key. And I think that this right here is another opportunity to realize that there's another untapped market that you may not be looking at, because everyone talks on social media. Oh, I need a side hustle, until my real estate business gets going. Real estate has so many opportunities. Going out there and partnering up with James and finding properties that meet the parameters and be a part of that network in your market. You're not stopping, you're going after the FSBOs and expireds. You're adding an opportunity to go after a whole nother target audience. And that is what this is all about. And that's why it's so important. And James, we'll share your information with everybody in here. So I just wanted to expand on that. There's a
Yep.
lot of listing opportunities that we're not looking at, and I want to make sure we're pointing that out. So you want to what else would you like to expand on in terms of some of the things that you're helping your coaching clients and agents that are around the country? Let's expand on that a little bit. What else are you doing for them?
Yeah, I'm just rolling it out. Just whatever somebody needs, wherever they are at in their career, you know, that's I'm just gonna base it on that. If somebody's never heard of rent to own, we're gonna start out with what it is, how we do it right. That's another big key. Like I teach a continuing education class on rent to own for agents. And you could even go to our site and watch. I've got like a 20-minute one. And then we just recorded one for EXP University as well. I don't know if that's released, but anyway, we just start with the basics and then get into, going through some scripts. Um, how do you talk to another agent or a lender? Because that's the key with the reverse lease option is finding that good buyer first.
Mhm.
And that the best way to find them is through other agents and lenders, because we're all in the business together running across the people. So they're lead sources. So that's another reason I got licensed in the first place. Hey, now I'm like in the boys club and I and learned the business, the basics, so I can talk to agents and lenders. So that's how we would start. Is just what's that conversation? How do you explain what we're doing and how we can help other agents and lenders do deals? Lenders love us. They can get the loan on the end after we've got somebody into a house. Like they need a loan. They don't just want to get a loan. We already got them the house, so they need it. And then
I love it.
And then our investors or us, we're putting financing on these loans. We're not BlackRock and just dump cash and holding these in cash. We're getting a loan. And so a lender can get two loans out of the deal. They freaking love us once it clicks for them. And they may have investors that they've worked with. Then it's just a nice introduction between you. So that's kind of the how we would start, just kind of
Love it.
start with
I love it.
what,
No,
what do you say? Who do you talk to?
that's awesome. Now, you know what? Let's do this. I'm gonna expand on this real quick. Um, who's your ideal seller? Like you're representing, like say you're investing, you're going to look for a property. What's your ideal property? Like, tell us like your buy box and your kind of like your parameters or in which you like to work with when you're working with sellers.
Well,
Or
since we're typically buying on market, um, and so we're just looking for cookie cutter homes, medium price range, that kind of thing. The same thing though, like if we were to go direct to seller and get a property first, which we've done. In fact, another way, John Burley, he's one of our mentors out of Arizona. He does it property first. And we've done that model as well, where we took a tired landlord. There's a lot of those out there. They want to get, or maybe they're close to retirement. They're just like, I want to get rid of this thing. Don't want to take a big tax hit now. Maybe sell it in 1 to 3 years. That's a perfect person to go to and say, hey, I'll find a rent to own buyer for you, give you a couple year um, rent to own and possibly get them a higher price, get them higher rent than they're currently getting, possibly. Um, so
I love it, dude. So
to your question,
landlords, that's a big deal because you got a lot of landlords. You can get that list of landlords very easily.
oh
And
yeah,
I can tell you this: I talk to landlords all the time when I'm talking to FSBOs and expireds. And these landlords, man, they're exhausted. They're
yeah,
like, oh my God, I'm so over owning homes. And that's okay. There's some people that love it. And there's some people that just it wasn't the right fit for them. Or they're getting out of California and moving to Kentucky. I see everything. So it sounds like there's some pretty decent opportunity to reach out to landlords, seniors that are done with the stairs, seniors that are done with the whole thing and want to, get the cash and go enjoy the rest of their life. There's lots of opportunities like seniors and divorce. There's so many opportunities to bring this up. Like I mentioned earlier, Carla and I bought our first home as a married couple back in 1990. The seller had a VA loan, so we assumed their VA loan, and the seller did a carryback for the second for the balance. I literally only paid the commission covered my closing costs, so it was really kind of no money out of my pocket. It was awesome, and I'm not a veteran,
yeah,
so that's cool.
yeah. Even as an
Beautiful loan,
investor, you could take
yeah.
over a VA loan.
Yeah, absolutely. So that's another opportunity. You can pull up VA, reach out to every one of them,
Mm.
assume their loan, do a seller carry. Because, like you mentioned, and this was my dad. when he was really bullish in real estate, he would buy homes. And then when he sold them, because they were paid off, he would do a seller carryback because he didn't want it paid off. He wanted the cash flow. And it was a very, very, very smart way to go. I mean, obviously, not everybody can do that. You're usually taking the equity from this home to go buy another home. But if you can keep the home, rent it out, and still afford, and it makes sense to you to buy that new home, man, that's awesome. So seller carrybacks are huge. Landlords are a big deal, and you can get that. Actually, I use My Plus Leads. I don't know if you use them. My Plus Leads. You can get FSBOs that expired and canceled, of course, pre foreclosure, NOD, NOT. But you also can do an add-on where you can add landlords, non-owner occupied properties, those types of folks. So that's a great way to go. You can add that. So you're already calling FSBOs expireds and pre foreclosure. Now you can add landlords and have another opportunity to talk about some of these other options we learned today, James. So that's huge. That's huge. I hope everybody's getting some really good stuff here. I know Richard commented he wants to learn more about this so we can work with pre foreclosures. I can certainly expand on that in terms of what I do to work with pre foreclosures. But James, what would you like to discuss in terms of working with a pre foreclosure? What's your approach when you're approaching either the agent that has it listed or the homeowner directly? What is your approach when you work with those distressed owners?
No, I haven't really put a lot of focus in that. I did get CDPE certified and had somebody that just kind of handed over a potential client to me. And so I've kind of gone through that process.
Okay.
But
All right. All
yeah,
right. That could
I
be a good,
definitely
yeah.
I want to dive into that and learn from you because I mean that's that's
Yeah,
your
no, that's certainly good. And that's what this is about, because we
yeah.
take the tools that you're using and put strategically place agents across the country, because like you said, you don't want to create your own competition. And I'm in San Diego, and I certainly would have no problem taking somebody under my wing. But really, you want to get coverage throughout the United States, because then you get an actual some collaboration going on at a very high level with
Yeah.
agents that are coming up. Well, I'm doing this. Oh my God, you're doing that. That's a great idea. I can't wait to start implementing that. And then you share and collaborate with other agents. So that's really what it's all about, man. That's cool.
Yeah.
So my
And
my
we
my
can
question. So did you have a follow up to that?
yeah, two things that we can do this in any state as long as we can make the numbers work. The other thing one little tip that is awesome. If you have a listing that kind of fits the rent to own buy box, which again is just cookie cutter homes in the median price range. And I say that that's our buy box because if we get the house back, it's just easy to go and find another rent to own buyer or a renter or list it on the market. Um, so that's kind of why we look at that. Um, but if your listing kind of fits that, when you list it on the MLS, in addition to putting we're open to FHA, VA, conventional cash offers, put it's available owner financing, lease option, or whatever your MLS verbiage is. You're going to get calls from people that could be potential good rent-to-own buyers. So it's a way to generate leads for yourself and open it up to more potential buyers for your listing clients. And you're going to get calls from investors because they're searching for those terms because they're trying to find those seller financing deals. Fine, turn them into an investor client. Like, don't don't
No,
let
no, that makes perfect
don't
sense,
know.
brother. Yeah, it
Yeah,
makes perfect sense. I think the biggest thing, and kind of what I talked about when we first started this call today, is getting more listings is the name of the game. You're going to create a ton more opportunity for you if you're reaching out to the sellers instead of going after buyers. Not that we don't want to work with buyers. Let's be clear, we do. I don't, but most agents want to. So I think going after the target audience is working with more sellers, because more sellers are going to create more sellers themselves. They're going to create more buyers because they're coming to your open houses in large numbers. Your phone is ringing off the hook with investors calling you. Trust me. When you take a listing, you get on a list from every investor on the planet, and they They call, they text, they email you every single time you get a new listing, and they don't stop until you tell them it's pending. And then they follow up is, do you have any other listings coming up? So investors are great, but you need to make sure that their buy box is realistic, because just like a seller, if they want $1 million for their $800,000 home, that's not going to work. As same thing with an investor. If you got an investor that's only willing to pay 50 cents on the dollar, we've got much better options for our sellers. You want to be able to build those relationships with the realistic investors. I have plenty of realistic investors that are doing fantastic work. And we're getting them very, very high prices for their home. Just closed a 2.2 in Encinitas 2 months ago. Last month, we closed a 1.1 out in La Mesa for an investor. So investors are beautiful, fantastic work with, but you need to make sure you're taking more listings so you can get more listing opportunities. You're working with more buyers, more investors, and you cannot do these open houses by yourself. You need quality buyer agents to help you with those open houses. And the goal is, if you can drive a bunch of traffic to those properties, they're getting so many buyer leads. They barely know what to do with themselves. So that's the goal. So you want to open it up to agents, James. And here's my question. What's the ideal agent that you're looking to work with when it comes to your creative financing, some of the things that you're really doing good things with?
Somebody that's looking for a niche and is willing to do the work. Because a lot of people get into coaching, groups and just don't do it. And that's what me and my business partner Toby did. Like we became the star students. We actually did the work. We, got our money back that we paid into it by just, sticking with it. So and just don't be afraid. Some people are afraid of getting on the phone.
So
But
somebody that has common sense would probably come into play.
yep,
Somebody that is willing to, don't quit your day job, and that day job should be reaching out to the lowest hanging fruit, the buyers, the sellers, right? The FSBOs, the expireds, the cancels, the pre-foreclosure, working with your attorneys, working with their sphere of influence. This is just another niche, just like REO. This is another niche. So those agents, I have this philosophy: it works if you do. So I think that's the ideal agent, if that's what I'm hearing correctly. Because be some
yeah,
work. It's gonna be some work.
it's but you nailed it though. You're just adding it on to what you're already doing and opening up more possibilities. So like I still work FSBOs and expireds um and putting some extra effort into that recently. But
Yeah.
doing both or doing just the rent to own, like I don't want to rely on that. There's waves, so I want to be able to take listings, and that's mainly what I do is take listings versus working with buyers. But I've got a buyer's agent on my team here locally, and it
I
all
think that's
it all
great.
works.
I
Just
think
keep,
that's great. So
yeah.
let's do this. Let's open it up. Is there anything else you'd like to expand on before we open it up for a little Q&A?
I can't think of anything. Oh, I
Okay,
can
cool.
link
Well,
into the chat, but yeah,
yeah,
let's
it'll
do
come up.
the
So if
chat
you
question.
go ahead and let's put your questions. Let's see. James just put his link tree in the chat box. So feel free to reach out to James, connect with him in terms of some of the things you're looking for, the things that we talked about. Keeping in mind that working with FSBOs, expireds, and pre-foreclosure is the name of the game. That's the lowest hanging fruit. Again, our circle of influence, we don't want to forget about them. We want to add investors, we want to add attorneys. But what we'll do with like where James comes in, he's going to be able to create more opportunities than what you had in before that. So let's ask a couple of questions. We've got looks like Rich from Orange County. What is the company using to exclude landlords? Rich, I use My Plus Leads to include landlords, FRBAs, or I forget what it's called, but you go to My Plus Leads, and I can drop a link in the chat box too, so you guys can have a copy of that. Home Partners, yeah, I heard that too, Lawrence. They're bad reviews for Homeward, and that's why they're good. That's why they're out.
Mhm.
Let's look at some of these other questions. What other questions do we guys have for James Brown, the hardest working man in real estate? What questions do we have for him?
Mark had a comment there about subject to are the lenders exercising the due on sale clause? Potentially. Um, it's a small percentage, but you have to definitely have kind of a backup plan for that because they may, and the reason they would might not do it is because as long as they're getting their payments, they don't want a house back, right? That's can be a nightmare. Banks aren't in the business for that. But that said, if they've got a 2.5, 3% loan on the books and they could get rid of that and have a 6.5, 7%, that might be worth them, raising the flag. So there are ways to, work with the seller and not trigger that, like not raise a big red flag where they're like, oh shit, hey, that's there. But I heard Rocket Mortgage is actively seeking those out right now. So my suggestion, if you go into that, is work with somebody that knows how to do all this, but have a backup plan. Like I mentioned, if you're doing this arbitrage thing where you're paying that payment, you've got a renter in there making a payment to you. If you had to go get a 7% or 8 as an investor, you're paying another point higher. So maybe that's an 8% loan. Um, will that still cash flow at that? If not, and that you only have plan A, you're putting that rent to own person or renter in a bad position. You're putting the seller in a bad position. You're you're not as at risk unless you put a bunch of money down. But anyway, there's that went down a little bit of a rabbit hole, but hopefully that answered your question.
Yeah, it's probably better to have an expert do that. But I can tell you this: my mom back in the day, when she was slinging real estate, she was selling a lot of homes. She got paid one time in rubies. She got she sold it to a jeweler. She sold the jeweler's house, and in lieu of commission, gave her a big thing of rubies. And I remember coming home when I was a kid, and she was showing us these rubies and told us how she sold this house and in lieu of some commission, there was deferred commission in rubies instead. That was cool. My brother sold a house for a guy. This is back in 2009. Sold a house for somebody that they, in lieu of some commissions, they threw in a limousine. I mean, so there's some creative stuff. You're going to start seeing some stuff. You're going to start seeing the last time we had a buyer's market, you started seeing there's a guy, Anthony Furlano in San Diego out of Coronado. When you bought one of his homes at full price, a Miata was inside the garage. It's yours. The seller was giving a Miata as a concession. You're going to start seeing more and more of that stuff going on as you start to see a creative market like that. Creative financing comes into play. So it may not be as just like for pre-foreclosure, like there's a lot of pre-foreclosure, but not a lot of post foreclosures that transitions to that. It's like just like creative markets come up where the sellers are offering concessions, whereas before they didn't have to. Those concessions can come in form of many different ways. Like I said, the Miata, a boat, whatever. So pay attention to when that starts happening. That's when the rent to own starts to rear its head because it's another option. It's a concession that the seller's willing to pay to open up the buyer pool. So the more you know about that, the more you can do deals. So James, I look forward to hearing more from what you're doing with your coaching program and tapping into these creative ways of doing things, man. I tell you, that's really what it's all about is just doing more deals, helping more people, doing more deals across the country. So
Yeah.
what
Hey, I
what else
wanted
would
to,
you like to expand on, James, before we end this call?
well, I just saw Lawrence King. Hey, what's up, Lawrence?
Yeah.
Uh,
What's up, man?
Lawrence
hey, good
King
to
in
see
the
you, man.
house. And just a real quick, just for everybody on the call, James Brown is one of our. Lawrence, you can help me out with this number better. We have 27 coaches on our team.
Yeah, about 27, correct.
27 coaches on our team. James Brown is our creative financing investor coach. Lawrence King just popped in and give everybody a quick anecdote on Coach Lawrence King. What are you doing to help agents grow their business, Lawrence, these days?
Well, what I do is I coach in sphere of influence and show how agents need to reach out or teach mastermind with them on how to reach out to their sphere throughout the month, the every quarter, every 6 months, every year. We do it every Thursday. I just put it in the chat there, 11 a.m. Pacific Standard Time at buildingtopagents.com. And when you come on there, you learn not just about sphere of influence and how to reach out and different ideas how to reach out to your sphere, but also we cover social media and how to reach out to them by our coach, Mandy Dredd. She teaches on social media and how to connect with those people.
Yeah, Mandy's a rock star, man. She's I love her energy. She's got such great energy. So what a great collaboration you guys have put together. So that's just an introduction to what we do here. We've got a lot of tools to help you grow your business. James Brown, man, the hardest working man in real estate. We have live in person, and what's funny is Lawrence King when he was on. Correct me if I'm wrong. Is it your mother's favorite realtor, Lawrence?
That's right.
that that is the coolest slogan I've ever heard in my entire life, and I just appreciate you both so much. We have so many coaches, so many tools, so many things we've got going on. James Brown, my absolute, just I'm so grateful for having you on today. Is there anything else? Any closing remarks that we'd like to share with the group before we let them get back to prospecting?
I wanted to say the reason I called you out, Lawrence, you said Home Partners of America had terrible reviews. Yeah. In fact, there was a website, it's still up, called Home Partners of America Exposed. And I actually know the person that started that. She got screwed by them. Rent-to-own's been given a bad name by companies like that. And I actually know people, in fact, agents that bought houses through them that worked out fine. But somebody sent me their contract. It's 79 pages long and it's full of CYAs for them. They're not necessarily setting people up for success, and we do it right because I don't want to end up in court. Like I want whatever. I don't want anybody mad at me. I want to help people, so we do it the proper way, and we can get into that if. And I was going to say too, like, if give me a call if you have any questions. It doesn't have to be coaching or, if you want to go in that deep. If you just have questions about rent-to-own, reach out. Maybe you got a client that you think might be a fit, you don't know, reach out. Or you want to do it yourself. Like our first deal, we helped an agent buy a duplex. There was a run up, like he had his locked in price. During COVID, it went shooting through the roof. He walked away with like 60 grand equity, went and bought a single family home and turned that duplex into a rental in 18 months as a brand new agent. Like we can help all sorts of people. So
I
if you
love
got
it.
questions, reach out.
I love it. I love it. Let's go. Real quick questions. You got to, this is your chance. Speak now or forever hold your peace. We have Coach James Brown. We've got Coach Lawrence King. What questions do you have for these two gentlemen or myself for that matter, that we can answer for you? And before I do that is if anybody on this call wants to figure out how they're going to introduce more listings into their real estate diet, you reach out to me and I'll help you. I'll walk you through it. I'll make the direct contact with Coach Lawrence King, the direct contact with Coach James Brown. Reach out to me and let's do a strategy session on your business, because at the end of the day, it just may need a couple of tweaks, a couple of things that you're not doing that you need to focus in on. It's what you're saying to, or who you're calling, or what you're saying to them, or what your messaging is, because it just might need a couple of tweaks. Reach out to me. I encourage you to reach out and schedule a 30-minute strategy session. Coach James Brown, thank you, brother. Coach Lawrence, man, I'll tell you, it's just awesome. Are there any questions for any of these guys before we let them go?
And Robert, while we wait, and just to jump in, tomorrow's mastermind is we're having one of our other coaches, which is a commercial realtor with us, that we're going to discuss his program, his free program for residential agents to refer out any commercial deals that they, nervous about. Refer them out to a commercial experienced agent that knows how to handle these transactions. And he has a platform for free for residential side that we're going to discover tomorrow.
Man, that's awesome. That is huge. And did you drop that in the chat box, you said?
Yeah. The link is on
Excellent.
the flyer on there.
Excellent. Thank you so much, guys. You know what? Any questions before I can move on? Because I do want to do. If you didn't put in the chat box, that's fine. Thanks for participating, guys. I want to make sure that you tune in next week. Next week's special guest is Dan Noma with Easy Street Offers. Lawrence, you know Dan. This guy is a beast when it comes to cash offers for properties. So I want to make sure that we bring Dan's coming on next week. He's bringing fire. I was on a call with him just last week, and I was blown away. And I know a lot about getting listings and working with the listings, but there's a huge sales skill that you can use with cash offers. Now, for full disclosure, I tracked the last 72 listings I've taken. I got a cash offer for every last one of them. Not one of them went because I know how to transition them from the cash offer. But you're going to find, like James was talking about today, more and more opportunities that a cash offer is going to save somebody their equity from saving their home from foreclosure. So make sure we understand how the cash offers platform works. Make sure we understand how the coaching that James is doing with his subject to and his rent to own lease option. And Lawrence, thank you so much for jumping on, guys. Make sure you schedule a strategy session. Let's find out what's going on under the hood, and let's do a quick diagnostic, and let's get you up and running. So with that said, guys, thank you so much. Thanks for tuning in to another episode of the More Listings Mastermind. You guys have a great week. We'll see you next Wednesday.